Hello, this is Unlock 3, listening and speaking for B1. This is week 4, day 5. In this video, we are going to focus on text organization features. On page 60, you will find this text. Using this text, we will study how text organization features work. Match the sequence words. Sequence words means time phrases like these: as soon as, after that, meanwhile, eventually, and during. Match the sequence words or phrases with their synonyms. So here are the synonyms. For example, the first one, the synonym of immediately after is as soon as. Pause the video here, do the exercise, and come back to check your answers. Here are the answers in 3, 2, 1. The synonym of during is in. The synonym of after that is next. The synonym of meanwhile is at the same time. And eventually means in the end. Let's look at these time phrases or sequence words one by one. Let's begin with as soon as. How does as soon as work? Imagine that this is time, and when you have two actions happening almost at the same time, not at the same time, but very close to each other, you can use as soon as. And after as soon as, you need a subject verb, you need a statement, you need a sentence. For example, here, as soon as he took over the city, Mehmet started rebuilding the city. So he took over the city, and as soon as he took over the city, he started rebuilding the city. So almost at the same time. Another example, as soon as he arrived in London, he took a taxi to Petra. So he arrived in London and he took a taxi to Petra. So what about after that? How does after that work? Again, this is time. And when you have two actions happening, one action happening here and one action happening after that. So maybe they are not very close to each other, maybe a little close to each other, but it is a little different from as soon as. So after that, you need a subject verb again. An example can be, we arrived in Petra at 2 p.m. After that, we started to walk around to take photos. We arrived in Petra. After that, we started to walk around to take photos. Now let's look at meanwhile. How does meanwhile work? To use meanwhile, you need two actions or more. One action is happening here, and another action is happening in a different context, but at the same time. So meanwhile means at the same time. Two things happening, maybe in different places, but at the same time. For example, here, uh, Mehmet II conquered Constantinople. He took over the city. He started rebuilding the city. He encouraged people to move there. At the same time, meanwhile, he made it the capital of the Ottoman Empire and founded many universities and colleges. Again, after meanwhile, you need a sentence with a subject and a verb. Let's take a look at this example. We took hundreds of photos. Meanwhile, we tried to talk to the local people to decide what to do next. At the same time, we took hundreds of photos, and at the same time, meanwhile, we talked to the local people. The next one is eventually. Let's take a look at eventually and how it works. Again, this is our timeline. and look at the activities happening. One activity, another one, and in the end. So eventually means after some activities, in the end, something else happens. After eventually, again, you need a subject and a verb. Let's look at this example. We visited all the important places. This is activity. We talked to the locals. Another activity. We bought some gifts for our friends. Another activity. And in the end, eventually, we went back to the hotel to get some rest for the next day. We have one more, during. Let's take a look at this one. This is our timeline. There is something happening in 1451, and something else is happening in 1481. During this period. So during means between 2 points in time. If you look at this, during this period, which period? So, Sultan Mehmet II ruled the Ottoman Empire for 30 years. 30 years. So 30 from 1451 to 1481. During this period, he became famous for his conquests across Europe and Asia. During this period, you need a subject verb. And after during, there is always a noun. For example, during this period, during the class, during the film, during the night. There is a noun after during. We stayed in Jordan for a week. During this period, we learned a lot about the history of Jordan and made a few good friends. Now you can go online and search for an interesting historical figure. Remember, a historical figure means a historical person or event. Then write a paragraph about this person or this event using the text organization features. One example is here. My grandfather was born in Austria in 1935. When he was just 1 year old, his family moved to Germany and he lived there until he was 8. During this time, he went to a school for children because his parents were working during the day. At, at this school, he played games with the other children, learned to sing songs, and attended school trips to different places around the city. Meanwhile, he learned to speak German like a real German person. Eventually, when he was 8, his parents sent him back to Spain so that he could start school. As soon as he arrived in Spain, he received bad news. His parents had died in a car crash. He lived with his uncle until he graduated from high school. After that, he went back to Germany and began to work as a Spanish teacher. So in this little paragraph, little text, this is not a historical figure, of course, just about a grandfather. In this little text, we can see a lot of text organization features. When, until, during this time, during, meanwhile, eventually, as soon as, after that. So you do the same. Spend some time to understand how to use these organization features. Spend some time and search about an interesting historical figure or event and write a paragraph. Remember, even though it feels very boring to many people, writing can be a great way to learn a language. It is in fact, it is probably the second best way to practice what you have learned after speaking. So It might feel really boring, but it is a really good way to practice what you have learned. In this video, we focused on text organization features using various time phrases or sequence words or phrases. You can now go to the next video for critical thinking.